All right, Indiana falls 70-67 Saturday afternoon to Michigan at Assembly Hall. I'm Jack Ankeny, joined by Todd Golden with our Indiana Hoosiers on SI postgame reaction video. And Todd, the big story outside of all the basketball that was played today, sort of going into this one, was that Indiana announced on Friday that Mike Woodson will step down after the season. He'll finish it out, step down after the season. He will not be back next season. So we got 2 months of coaching search stuff to talk about. But obviously the anticipation with Dusty May, a former Indiana manager and staff member, coming back and coaching Michigan today. How would you sort of just describe kind of, that aspect of the lead up to the game and what took place at Assembly Hall?
Everybody was anticipating something, whether what the crowd reaction was going to be, what the crowd react to both coaches, to both Woodson and to Dusty May. Dusty May got a pretty good cheer when he was introduced as Michigan coach, which I think would have happened regardless of what was happening with Indiana's program. I mean, he is a native son. He's from over in Greene County, which is right next door to us. Went to Eastern Greene High School, which is basically a stone's throw over the county line from where Bloomington is. So that was always going to be the case. Now, of course, you add in the fact that Indiana has not played well, that Woodson was under fire, and then finally did announce his future this week. That just kind of added to it a little bit, but not to the point where it was like, there was the cheer for Dusty May, and then it was move on to the next. Yeah. Woodson got a muted greeting when he was introduced. Up where I was, there was a couple people booing. I don't know why. I mean, his fate is sealed. I mean, it's kind of seems to be piling on to me to be doing that at this point.
Yeah.
But as far as the atmosphere of the game is concerned, there's a lot of people anticipating something, and it was basically pretty brief and muted, and then it was on to the game.
Yeah. So I went to the Dusty May, and we'll get into the game, obviously, of course, but I went to the Dusty May press conference after, and sort of just to summarize his comments, we'll write a ton about this that fans can read more about. The gist of his reaction, he obviously got asked about his interest in the job, and he was pretty much just like, it's flattering to hear all of the cheers and to know that I'm appreciated here, even as he didn't play here. That's kind of the interesting thing. He's like, I never scored a point here, and people love me, and that I'm not quoting him directly with that, but I thought that was kind of an interesting comment. What was Woodson's tone like post game?
Woodson was just disappointed in the loss. I mean, Indiana made it clear they didn't really want any questions about what led up to his to the separation agreement. There were some questions that kind of worked around that a little bit, in terms of how the players have dealt with it this week, which Woodson answered. He was actually probably a little bit more honest. Not that he's ever totally dishonest. I don't want to imply that, but a little bit more honest about just how hard it's been lately to not only for the team to play better. He was hard on himself, said he's done a bad job of getting them ready. Stuff that he said before, but it had a little bit more honesty to it today. The pressure is off of Mike Woodson. Right. I mean, we know what's going to happen with him. I actually did sneak into the Dusty May presser there at the end. I watched most of it. And it was, he was the one who had the harder day than Mike. Now, Mike Woodson, it's hard to come out here after, ending your time here. So that part of it was probably hard for Mike, no doubt.
Yeah.
But Dusty May is the one who, has to come here and wonder what reception he's going to get, what kind of distraction he is to his own team. And, I watched some of that press conference, and he handled it about as well as you could expect. I mean, he's deflecting attention off of him, and which is what you're supposed to do in this situation, and was respectful of his time at Indiana without dwelling on it. You know, I mean, I was in there when he answered the question about, I'm not here anymore. I never played a game for Indiana, and but he was also walked the right line between, not seeming too, dismissive of his time here, but also embracing his time here. It was a good tone that he set, a smart tone, and because he was in an awkward position today.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he was happy to be home, but probably also relieved that this one's over with. And that there's not another one later in the season between these two teams.
And that he came out with the win, obviously.
That too.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
no, I thought he handled it well. I mean, he pretty much said, I'm focused on Michigan. That's, it's what you expect him to say, so didn't say anything, too wild. But we'll write about that after.
Let's
and
put
everything.
it this way: any Indiana fan that watches it isn't going to be dissuaded that he might be the wrong guy for the job. Let's put it that way.
That's a good way.
And I'm not trying to put words into Dusty's mouth, because that's not what I mean by that. I'm just saying he gave a good impression.
Yes.
And didn't give any bad impression that would suggest that any red flags in terms of not wanting for the people who would want him to come here. They didn't get any ammunition about or that they didn't get anything that didn't affirm their reasons for him to not want to be here. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and I think the way his team played was intriguing too. If you're looking at Dusty as a coach, so I guess we should get to the basketball now. Indiana did not start this game particularly well. Michigan, I think, outplayed them really in pretty much every way in the first half. Got out to a 16-5 lead after a Will Cheddar jumper about 5.5 minutes in. Indiana punched back, tied it back 16-16, and then Michigan went into halftime up 43-27. What did you see as sort of the issues for Indiana or the things that Michigan did well?
I don't think Indiana was running any kind of coherent offense. I mean, they were settling for a lot of jump shots. Movement away from the ball has been a problem all year. I just thought Indiana kind of was stagnant in that sense, in the way. And some of it had to do, certainly Michigan had a lot to do with it. It's hard to attack when you have 2 7-footers you can put down there in the lane. But even taking that into account, the cutting out of there's just a lot of settling for jump shots. I thought Indiana didn't have a whole lot of life to them. Defensively, early in the game, once again, they were defending the 3-point line very poorly. Trey Donaldson got off to a big start for Michigan. And, they just kind of existed out there. It was nothing that the crowd could sink their teeth into. They kind of took their own crowd out of the game. And, it was hard to know who you could trust out there on the floor in the first half and into the early part of the second half as well. And, that's been an issue with Indiana all season long. You don't know. From player to player, you don't know who you're going to get. Yep. And then the good side of that came later in the second half.
Yeah, so Michigan got out to a decent start in the second half, pushed the lead to 17, but then Indiana played really well, I thought, from about the 17-minute mark to about midway through the second half. They cut it to a 53-52 Michigan lead with 9:30 to play. I thought it was really telling from a coaching perspective. Mike Woodson yanked Umar Bala about a minute and a half into the second half, turned it over, missed a pretty easy layup, one that he makes probably 80% of the time. Sat him on the bench. He started Trey Galloway ahead of Miles Rice in the second half, and Miles Rice did not play in the entire second half, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty confident about that. So he really rode with that lineup with Galloway, Leal, Goody, Bryson Tucker played a little bit, Mbako, and then Renew for most of the second half, but Bala did check in there sort of at the end. And Indiana got back into this one. I think it was probably the most energetic that Assembly Hall had been all season. You could probably argue another game or two, but I thought it was a good atmosphere overall. What do you think Indiana did in the second half to sort of get in this one and really kind of go back and forth with Michigan until kind of the final minute?
Well, for one thing, they defended way better. Obviously you can't make a run without defending, and they made it much tougher on Michigan's guards to get their offense going, to the expense a little bit of letting Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden get into the game offensively a little bit, but it didn't kill them for most of the second half. So they were able to get some traction on the defensive end, and then they got Mackenzie Mbako going. Anthony Leal made some big shots, and so they were able to do it out of better ball movement, better screening, and things like that. So it was just fundamentally more sound than it was in the first half. And but it really, they had a shot clock they forced a shot clock violation in there during their run that got them to the point where they tied the game. And this has been the pattern. I asked Mike Woodson after the game, these close games they played at home in particular, and I guess the Ohio State game away that they did win, they've eventually settled in on a 5 that worked for them in the second half. The problem is it's never the same 5. I mean, it's, you think back to the one at Ohio State, it was Bala who was on the floor for most of the game. Now, at that point, Renew was still recovering from his knee injury, but that's kind of it's kind of maddening about the Hoosiers because, the 5 you mentioned that were out there on the floor have at other times been completely unreliable. Right. And even Galloway today, I mean, Galloway was at times a little bit of a hand grenade out there. I mean, they survived it for the most part up until the end, but but they were able to persevere and they were able to get some grittiness out of that team. And, they showed some signs of life, which, I mean, I know that sounds like really damning with faint praise, but, based on what they showed in the first half, that was progress.
Yeah. So it was tied up 59-59 with about 4 minutes to play. I thought the sequence that, I don't know the right word, if it changed the game or the turning point, I guess you could call it. Mike Woodson was very upset about there not being a foul called on Vlad Golden on a defensive rebound. And then Michigan grabbed the ball, went down the court, and Golden got a dunk to give him the lead. And from that point on, Michigan kind of out-executed them over the final couple minutes. And that's been sort of an issue for Indiana in some of these recent games. If you think back to Purdue and Maryland, they've just sort of gotten outplayed in the final couple minutes. What did you think Michigan did? I know like some of it is as simple as free throws. Galloway missed the second of 2 free throws that could have made it a 1-point game. And then obviously Danny Wolf's free throws then make it 4 instead of 3. So Indiana doesn't have a chance to tie it. What did you feel like sort of separated Michigan from Indiana in the last minute or two?
Michigan put the ball in the hands of their best players. That was part of it because Wolf had a big Wolf made a nice play right after that Golden play that you were talking about. He came in, he curled off of a Golden screen, but then he took his dribble right tight off of that screen.
Yeah.
Leo actually defended him pretty well on it, but because he took it tight, Leo was, by the dint of the way he took his dribble, was put out of position. That gave Wolf the room to kind of do. Wolf is so big; he was very good today at this kind of swoop shot that he would do to the right of the basket. He made that. He was fouled on the play, and that certainly helped Michigan down the stretch. But Wolf and Golden were very good in the second half for Michigan. Generally, they both scored the majority of their points in the second half. For Indiana, it was a little bit of a mix of some bad fortune and some bad, it's just some bad late game decisions again. For example, Indiana brings the ball down 3, I think it was at that point. They call a timeout. Nothing wrong with calling a timeout. And Mackenzie Mbako had taken the shot. Yeah. He missed it anyway, so that didn't really matter.
The reaction of Assembly Hall, not to interrupt you, it was like a collective gasp. I think imagine if Mbako made that would have.
That's not the issue. The issue was it was their last timeout.
Right.
So what happens is, and I hate to and I'm not trying to imply that the decision to do the timeout was bad based on the outcome, but what they did was Mbako took a shot early in the shot clock, presumably to avoid getting fouled.
Right.
Missed it, and Luke Goody did get the offensive rebound, but they didn't have any timeouts left.
Right.
And so he gets tied up. The possession arrow went to Michigan. Yeah. And, I'm sure there's people out there who are like, well, they should have known the possession arrow was to Michigan, and maybe they shouldn't have called the timeout in the first place, etc. To me, that's just something that happens, But then then Michigan missed the free throw. Mm-hmm. But then the ball gets in Trey Galloway's hands coming down the floor. And Trey has not shot well at the line this year. He's not the person you want to have the ball in your hands in a fouling situation.
Yep.
He kind of fumbled the ball a little bit on the 3-point line. I think he was trying to line up a shot, maybe for the same reason Mbako took a quick one to avoid having to go to the line. But when he fumbled the ball, it gave Michigan the chance to foul him, and then he made 1 of 2 at the line.
Yeah.
It's things like that. Those are little things, but they're big things. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
they add up. Yeah.
Indiana has, unfortunately, in these close games that they've been in their losing streak, it's things like that are killing them. Having the ball in Galloway's hands and, Michigan's defense, if I went back and I haven't looked at the replay of it, maybe they dictated that. Maybe I'm not trying to be too harsh on Indiana here, but those are the things that are happening. The end of the game at Maryland where they don't have the right lineup on the floor and it caused undue confusion.
Yeah.
The end of the game at Purdue where they wanted a timeout and they didn't get it. Those are the kinds of things that are, that have sent them into the tailspin that they're in.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because would they have won anyway, or would they have won if those things wouldn't have happened? Maybe not. I mean, but they give away their chance to win, and it hurts.
Yeah. So sort of just to recap some leading scores and key stats here. Malik Renew led Indiana with 16 points. Good sign for him because he really has not been the same player since returning from injury. 7 for 14 from the field. 5 assists is pretty high for him. Mackenzie Mbako had 15 points. I thought he played well today. 11 rebounds for him is pretty high. Anthony Leal, 12 points. That's actually the second most points he scored in his Indiana career. Trey Galloway, 9 points, 3 for 11 shooting, though, 1 for 6 from 3, 2 for 4, like you mentioned at the line. Umar Ballo, only 6 points and 4 rebounds today. Definitely didn't play his usual workload. Same for Miles Rice, 2 points on 1 for 6 shooting. Indiana shot 41% overall. 6 for 19 from 3, which is 31%. That's sort of what Indiana has been this year. Michigan, it was sort of just the big three for them. Danny Wolf, 20 points. Trey Donaldson, 18 points. Vlad Golden, 18 points. Nothing special from 3, 5 for 21, 44% from the field. So if you look at it from that perspective, it was really sort of three key players for Michigan that beat Indiana. And they didn't shoot the 3 particularly well, which is sort of hurt Indiana. So Todd, I guess any other final thoughts to wrap this one up before we call it?
Yeah. Well, it's just going to be a tough road. I mean, going up to Michigan State is not easy for anybody, no matter what team, no matter what caliber of team you are in the Big Ten. Do I think Indiana on their day can be competitive? Sure. I mean, they can be competitive with anybody. They can also be completely uncompetitive with anybody too. So who knows which Hoosiers we're going to get. And then, after that, it's UCLA here at home next Friday, which, is probably a lot like this Michigan game. It's a game that I feel like Indiana can probably win, but it just depends on which Hoosiers show up. It is encouraging that Anthony Leal was more of an offensive option today. Yeah. That helps. I mean, you can't, when teams can't sag off of him, which Michigan did do early, obviously it opens things up for everybody else. So that was a positive. Today it was good to see Malik Renew get back into the game. Indiana needs to work a little bit though on their, or not a little bit, a lot bit on their decision making. They got away with some things today too. Even though Malik was more productive, he still at times forced the issue against 2 7-footers in the lane. It's like, get it out of the lane. I think guys are trying. I'm sure they're pressing and they're, who knows where their heads are given everything that's going on right now. So there were some encouraging things out there and some things that make you kind of shake your head a little bit. Obviously, Miles Rice needs to be more of a presence for this team. And Omar Ballo, for the first time, I think, during Big Ten play, he's usually the one who's kind of dictating the flow in the paint to the opponent. Thought the opponent dictated the flow to Omar Ballo a little bit today because of the 2 7-footers. He seemed to be more hesitant with his finishing than he typically was.
Yep.
And then it kind of took him out of his mindset in the game. He did have a nice block late in the game. That block he had on Danny Wolf on the baseline was at the very top of his reach. And then he nearly got the ball anyway out of bounds. But that was a nice play. But overall, he was not very good today. So the same as usual. I mean, it's a mismatch, a hodgepodge of, this player did okay. Well, this player fell off a little bit. And it's kind of the story of the season. They just can't get any consistency out of anybody that really that you can depend on to get this team in the right direction.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. That's sort of been kind of the season-long issue for Indiana. But I think we'll wrap it up there. Like I said, Indiana falls today 70-67 to Michigan. That puts Indiana's record to 14-10 overall, 5-9 in Big Ten play. It's Indiana's 5th straight loss and 7th in their last 8. They go to number 9 Michigan on Tuesday. Todd and I will both be there. So we'll talk to you after Indiana's game against Michigan on Tuesday in
Michigan
East
State.
Lansing. Sorry, Michigan State.
Yeah,
right.
That's all right.
I got Michigan on the mind.
I have green on. I that's how I remember.
Yeah, right. Michigan State, number 9, Michigan State, Tuesday. For Todd Golden, I've been Jack Ankney with our Indiana Hoosiers on SI postgame reaction video, and we will talk to you Tuesday night in East Lansing. See ya.